Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Rolandus. Oops. There, sorry. Yeah, listening to the two speakers previously fits in pretty well what I want to talk about. I think both of them really capture this area. We all know to get to the 1.5 degree and net zero by 2050 is going to take a lot of effort. From the commodity side, what commodities we're going to put in, how governments are going to work together, the electrification, and also the amount of trillions of dollars that have to be spent to do this. So that is really where it gets difficult. The important thing that we've got to note, it's not an easy process. Everyone is saying, let's go to renewables, let's get rid of fossil fuels to get rid of energy. And they say, let's do it fast, but they don't know how to do it. We don't know how we're going to get out of fossil fuels. And a lot of people are saying, let's shut coal mines and let's not build any more coal mines. Or the oil and gas industry should stop investing in new wells and keep growing the oil and gas industry because we do have a solution, but we don't have a solution. And we don't know what the solution is and where the middle ground is. So let's not stop doing what we're doing. Let's try get the renewables and push for the renewables, but don't stop doing the fossil fuels. Because look what's happened between 2004 to 2021. What did we get from renewables? We went from 1.9% to 5%, and we're still burning, utilizing with the energy growth, as we spoke about, the previous speaker spoke about, energy growth is going up. We're utilizing much more fossil fuels than we've used before. So we can't get out of it. We got to try. We got to keep pushing all these acts, and everyone's trying around the world, wind, solar, etc. But you even look at the oil companies, and you can take BP as a good example. They were all saying we're going into renewables. We got to switch into renewables. We're going to do less investments in the oil and gas industry. We're going to go into renewables. And suddenly they realized we can't make money there. It's a tough industry. You're competing against a different generation of people. You also can't make the returns, as the previous speaker said. The wind and solar is not giving the good returns. The cost of producing it is a lot more. So you've seen the energy companies now, their share price getting hammered because they're going into renewables. And these companies are not there to save the world. They're there to look after their shareholders. So these companies suddenly are saying, no, we're going back into producing more oil. You saw Shell do it, and BP followed recently a similar line. So that is very interesting. All this effort and all this money to try get out of fossil fuel, we've moved from 1.9% to 5% between to 2004 till today. Now look at the amount of money that the world has invested for the small amount of energy transition. Since 2004, we spent $4 trillion, and that was just to get this extra 3%. We still, more than 80% is fossil fuels. And what have we replaced it with? That's a bit like the previous speaker was saying, renewable energy, electrified transport, carbon capture storage, and the various different areas where we've gone into it. But this sort of gives an idea how much money we have to spend in the future to really get independent from fossil fuels. It's enormous. And which areas are we going into? And we're not certain we can go into those areas. You know, how much wind can you get? How much solar can you get? How much, that's the point I'll talk about, electrified transport. How much can we go there? Carbon capture storage. How much can we do? We don't know, but the numbers and the amount of money that has to be invested in that area is enormous. In 2022 was $1.4 trillion. We're talking over the next few years, $4.5 trillion. Between 2031 and 2040, $6.9 trillion to try move out of fossil fuels. So governments, industry are going to have to spend enormous amounts of money to get out of the fossil fuel industry. Now, this is the important factor. Do we have the commodities, and are we able to produce the commodities that is required for this energy transition? So as you can see, we're talking about copper. You were talking about the grid and how much copper. If we're going to electrify all our vehicles, we got to charge the vehicles. We don't have the transportation systems for electricity. We don't have the grids strong enough, and able enough to carry the amount of electricity that has to be carried into each household or different areas to charge these vehicles. So if you just take you talk the battery industry going into electric vehicles, we spoke about the problem is subsidies are being given today for people to buy batteries, electric vehicles, which are not coming from the same country, they're coming from more than likely China. Most of the batteries in the world today are produced in China. And electric vehicles, sure, the Chinese produce electric vehicles. They're not exporting as much. They're utilizing the electric vehicles in China. But the big thing is the batteries. 80%, I don't know the exact figure, of the batteries are produced in China, South Korea, etc. But the raw material is mainly coming from Chinese own mines. So we heard, look what we got to do in copper. Today we produce 32 million tons of copper per year. By the year 2050, we got to produce 60 million tons of copper per year. You take nickel, another important battery component. Today we produce 2.9 million tons of nickel a year. By 2050, we got to produce 9.2 million tons. So can the world produce this amount of commodities? Where can it be produced? And who's going to produce it? So if you have a look at copper on its own, copper, important commodity, the earlier speaker spoke about Chile. Chile is a major copper producer. But look what's happening in Chile today. The biggest producer in Chile, the state-owned company Codelco, their grades are going down. They cannot make money today. They got massive debt in Chile, and Codelco is struggling to produce the amount of copper that they have produced historically, and that's going down and will continue going down unless they make massive capital investments in the country. So what is happening if you look at copper today? Look what's happened over the years. Additional resources, the people investing more in copper has gone down. Building new copper mines is a lot more expensive, as evidenced by Codelco in Chile. The amount of people applying and looking to increase copper production around the world is going down substantially. So the world really needs to invest more into these commodities. And do we have the places to go? That's where we come to Mr. Kaufman's discussion. Where do you go to produce these commodities? They are in these difficult countries. They are in these countries which have state capture. They are in these countries which have massive corruption. So a lot of the Western companies are not going to these new territories to produce the commodities that are required for this new electricity transition. So where are it today? And we see what's happening. The Chinese saw this. The Chinese saw this long before any of us saw it in the West. The Chinese saw what's going to happen in the electric vehicle industry. They saw it many years ago. And the Chinese started investing in mines in these areas, difficult areas, and started producing these commodities and own these mines. Today, look at it, for example. China consumes 50% of the world's commodities, in nearly every commodity except oil and gas. And the Chinese knew they have to survive. They're not a mineral-rich country. They had to do what the Japanese did in the 60s, where the Japanese needed to import commodities. They went to Australia, and they started investing in Australia when you had METI giving the soft loans to the Japanese trading companies, and they developed Australia. The Chinese have done the same, and they've done it for a long time. So the Chinese today are a massive producer of copper in the world. They went to the DRC, and they're the biggest producer of copper in the DRC. They're the biggest producer of cobalt in the DRC. They own most of the mines in the DRC, which produces copper, cobalt, an extremely important component for the production of batteries. They then realized you need more nickel in batteries, and they went to Indonesia when everyone was too scared to go to Indonesia. Back to the problems of operating in those countries. Western countries don't want or cannot operate in those countries with the rules and regulations that apply to them that don't apply in the same manner to Chinese companies. So the Chinese today dominate the cobalt market, they dominate the copper market, and they definitely dominate the nickel market. Now these are the three important components, especially in electric vehicles, which we need for the batteries and then for the grid to upgrade the grid. So my fear that the Western world has been sleeping. The Chinese outread us. The Chinese will produce these commodities, which produce the batteries, which they are doing today. And the question is, today they're exporting the batteries. What happens when they don't export the batteries and they say we're only exporting the full vehicle? What does the West do? And I was talking to Martin Wolf about this the other night. He said, what will happen is, we correct, and then we can talk about the EITI. We talk state capture. Do these countries, once you build a mine in a country, they got you. They own you because you can't move your mine. It's not like a Nike factory. You build your Nike factory in Malaysia, they start changing the rules on you, they do a bit of state capture, changing taxes, you move to Bangladesh, you move somewhere else. Your mine's there. And they do start changing taxes, they do start changing royalties on you. They may even go as far as state capture, where they take the mine from you. We've seen it. You're in the country. Once your mine's built, they own you. So what happens then? Does the world sit back and say we don't switch to electric vehicles? Or do you get another genius like Elon Musk who says we can produce batteries without nickel and we'll use lithium or more lithium, and maybe you can, and you'll find a solution, great for the world. If not, it's going to be an interesting story. So I think the world on this electrification, and especially electric vehicles, the Chinese are way ahead of us. And how the world accommodates that, I'm not sure. State capture, maybe. The world says, okay, we don't go to electric vehicles, like Martin Wolf told me last night. They will not be dominated by Chinese making the vehicles, and then we will just have to slow down on the amount of electric vehicles. But I think we're in an interesting transition stage, and I don't know how it's going to end. Thank you.